Okay. So that means if I understood you right, the question would be, or the assumption is that meeting and engaging in relationship is already meeting in the, you're already meeting in the ring of the feminine.
Yeah.
And you already you
Yeah.
already walk in like into foreign territory, and it's like almost you walk into a battle with a handicap, with challenge already.
Yes. I mean, and it doesn't have to be a battle, but it can also be a dance, but still like the roles are not equal. And so it's like, what do you do with that?
Yeah, that's really cool. So I would just not come in immediately with how I see that, but more like I want to just give presence to that voice and to that, I would say, fear. And I think that's, I would maybe even call a collective voice of fear of men. Like, and it's maybe that place that we spoke before of the wounded heart in men speaking, that says there is the world of doing and stuff and changing matter, and I know how to do that. But once I engage with a woman, after the first great moments of where hormones are taking care that everything's good and I feel fine, when it really enters relational space and reality, I'm actually not at home. And I put a bit of I exaggerate just to make it more clear and nuanced. I'm challenged and I'm not equal. And I will never be therefore fully safe or feel like I can contribute as much and have my full agency. And I think that voice is super powerful, because if we would take that serious and not as a description of the reality, how polarity works, but a description of the experienced, lived reality of a lot of man generations, whatever, how far back we want to look, of man's experiences in relationships, I think that it's very powerful in a way that it would explain how men, again, stereotypically, would defend, shy away, kind of like devalue relational experiences in the feminine because they're not feeling safe. And you cannot tolerate that feeling. You don't feel safe and you feel a bit helpless. And one thing that that humans will not do is to live in that state forever. You will find a way to try to change that around, because it's very destructive. We cannot tolerate it. Well,
let me just add one thing to what you said, that is like all you said, like it's I feel inferior and so on, unless I abandon somehow like something in me to be able to navigate that space. That's the choice that I have.
And that abandoning that something in myself would be then?
Maybe like that, the part that's not that interested in relationships, or like that looks at it somehow differently, that looks at this like way more pragmatically and doesn't want to engage that much. And like it's like, not that it doesn't have a place, but it's like something else matters somehow more. And so the only way that I can really like function in the relational space is if I leave out that part, which is almost like an expression of this part. Like not being able to really relate to like all the different parts and being to navigate that, but to be like, what's either this or that.
Yeah. And again, I welcome really that voice that expresses something. I don't think that's how it is. but that's a very strong place that probably a lot of people would agree. It's like, of course, that's how it is. So we speak, or you speak from a structure that exists in the world. Now, I would say what you describe is like the place that you let abandon in yourself is your power, or your rootedness as a man in your masculinity, which is again a cultural counter movement that we have experienced, which is good and bad at the same time, and doesn't really matter what label we give it. It's just what happens in life, and now let's see what we do with it. That a lot of more men, your my generation already before, learn to kind of pull their energy a bit away from the base and train more the heart, and become maybe very proficient in this relational world and create safety there, which is noble at first because you just expand capacity. But if it's done in a way that you train something here in order to compensate something else, or not touch something else, which is your power, your purpose, your drivenness, your goal orientation, your masculine orientation in life, it will backfire, and it always does, because you basically, you cannot live on your negative pole only, and it will hurt your own body often, also hurt, like it has an effect, and it will have an effect on the relationship, because now you're safe there, but there's like, it's like two poles that both want to transmit, two pole pluses of a magnet wanting to engage with each other. They can talk with each other nicely because they understand each other, but it will not create flow of energy. So it needs that link again, like a positive and a negative, to make that a flow. And so that's now the other version of maybe what I said before, how men have learned to navigate that feeling of not being safe. So the one was by, in a way, devalue the feminine, make that lesser, so that in I call it like, you're not equal, coming into the relational arena is less dangerous, less threatening, and it can be very active, violent, or just just the subtle, like devaluing of the feminine of women, just as a little bit less. I mean, we had so much of this that women couldn't get certain jobs, like weren't deemed intellectually as capable as men, whatever, like 1 million reasons or ways we did that. Or now the other movement is like, okay, then I try to become equal in that way, but that has another side effect. And so the way I would look at it, if we're not just looking at this hurt lens of polarity, I would say there is a design of life that is unflawed. That, again, in the Taoist principles, there is the yin and the yang that basically speak of that polarity, which also has a very important counterpart, that in the yang and in the yin, there is a center and a very important element of the opposite within itself. And only that creates like the circle of life and light that sustains all life. And so I would not agree with that the relational experience, when a man and a woman, the masculine and the feminine, come together, is already the relational experience of the feminine, and the masculine is like a weird element that has to fit into that tent. It's like, now you're needing to go into that territory. It's kind of like, oh my God. Like, and I go in there because like life's pushing me, but I can't wait to get out of there again and go to my real home. And I need to go hunting, and then I need to so that would be a bit weird. Let's say if life is built, and it's almost like man would be sentenced to deal with something in life that's just fundamentally not right for them. But I think that there is a certain truth to it that both have to learn something about that's foreign to them to some degree, or not as natural to some degree, in engaging in relationship. And relationship is not just talking about emotions, it's also building a house, taking care of the kids, guarding your territory. So when a man rides out, more like archaic kind of like picture speaking, rides out to defend the territory or guards the village, he's engaged in relationship. Because what is he doing it for? For his own sake, but also for his sake, for his family, his wife, his ancestors, his children, and so forth. It's a relational movement that activates that part of the protector, for example, the conqueror or the hunter, very strong. So when he's out hunting, he's not just doing it for himself, he's out hunting to bring it back to sustain his family.
But then from that view, everything is relational.
That is true.
But then you could just continue the distortion and say, well, the way that a man or the masculine relates is by following his purpose and being out in the world and taking care of his family.
That is true.
But that doesn't heal the split.
I think
that still means that when he's with his woman, he still feels inferior because that's what she feels at home at. And he feels at home at doing stuff and making sure that the container is being taken care of.
Yeah, but okay, let's see. I'm not trying to convince you of something, but that's a general orientation that I hold that for me makes the deepest sense in relationship to life, that everything is relational, like everything. There is nothing as an isolated experience in this universe. It just doesn't exist. Even if you go into physics, into biology, it's all relational interconnectedness, interconnected experiences of life with different expressions. So in the experience of the masculine and the feminine, again, it's not that the man then comes he's expressing his relationality by hunting only. And once he comes back to his woman, he needs to abandon his masculine and now is in there. Because it sounds a bit then like he's he needs to bow his head and cower and kind of be subjugated and now endure the time of being in an emotional relational space. And then it also doesn't mean that it's only the question of how the man relates to that. It's also how the woman relates to that. Of course, a female, a woman can have that same distorted perspective. And now the power the power is turned, and now you're in my turf, and now you will not feel safe here. And I will make you feel how it is to feel inferior, which I maybe feel in other places of power. And so that is true then, and has been often very much true, that there is not an equal meeting of powers that express itself differently, that creates something else more beautifully together, but that there is a fight over domains of power that kind of shift, who's in whose kingdom or queendom at which times, which when that works well, we also call it a stable relationship or a good relationship. If the agreements is in such a way that they're not fighting all the time about it, but they surrender to that, that's a good arrangement. And that's also beautiful because there's also there's also principles at work there. But what I would call a next level of experiencing polarity in a more flourishing kind of way is that the relational space is not within the feminine, but the relational space is what is being created by two forces coming to go together in a larger orientation of life. Because when relationships are the end to life, you're in trouble. With everything, it's the man doesn't know for what he's fighting for, you're in trouble, because fighting in itself is no end. relating in itself is also no end. It's almost like the sacred perspective of marriage, that you come together in front of a congregation that witnessed something in front of God, or whatever you call the sacred domain. And through that, something larger is being created. And that's the relational field, or the field that holds relationality and purpose at the same time. So the relationship itself is being created. And then it's not that one is in the relational field and the other comes and joins. It's two creating this together, but by bringing what they have to bring in order that something else is being created. If both bring the same, it has less magnetic charge. It has less capacity of manifestation also. So if both bring difference, but meeting as equals in the difference, something else is created that has a quality that neither of them alone can manifest. And then, of course, biologically, children are the most concrete example of this, that something else is being created that is different than either of them and sustains life. And in a spiritual dimension, that a field of energy, of love, of purpose is being created that sustains both of them and nourishes them and inspires them and challenges them and helps them to grow in a way that none of them could create and develop by themselves. And that this is infused by something larger, by a higher purpose or a higher orientation, which is not the masculine orientation of going away from relationality so I can finally do my thing again, but by like surrendering my deepest expression of being male, of being masculine, or of being a woman, being feminine, into something that I cannot do by myself, and let that transform me and work through me.